Hello! So today I'm going to talk about Vivienne Westwood and the relationship between Westwood and Lolita fashion. So if you're relatively new to the fashion, you may be somewhat aware of Vivienne Westwood. You may have heard of rocking horse shoes or something like that, but you may not really know the sort of impact she's had on the actual fashion. So I'm just going to talk a bit about that today. So we're going to start off around the sort of 80s and 90s and the sort of punk sort of movement itself. So Vivienne Westwood was a punk and she made outfits for people in the punk movement, and you may be aware of her famous shop she had called Sex. But essentially that all did well, and the brand was making its way abroad, including places like Japan, and the Japanese people took a liking to it, and there were people who liked the fashion and dressed in it, as evident in the photographs I will put around of some punk people from Fruit magazine. And I think there is a few reasons for this. One, the fashion is just really cool, and two, I think the punk ideals of speaking up and not being afraid to disturb the peace in order to get your point and view across is very just antithetical to the Japanese way of just sort of going about things, and perhaps that spoke to some people who felt that they wanted to speak out about issues, but they felt they couldn't because of the society they live in. So back to the fact that the fashion looks really cool. I think this is sort of, key reason as to why punk is still around now, even to. So we can see punk influence of like Japanese fashions in general. So the obvious one is punk lolita. That is a mainstay of lolita. I don't see it all too often, but it's definitely a part of lolita, and I'm sure you've come across that term at some point. The other thing is, I think punk also influenced other Japanese fashions such as visual kei, even though it may not be as direct and obvious. I think certain aspects like having coloured hair and tattoos and piercings and things like that, which we associate with alternative fashion, I think punk had at least some sort of sway in how we got towards visual kei. And other than direct fashion, there is other media such as Nana. How can I forget about that? That is just like the Vivienne Westwood book in many ways. There's loads of amazing different fashions in there inspired by the brand. Some are direct pieces from the brand, and that is almost like a time capsule of what Vivienne Westwood was like in that era. So as you can see, Japan really embraced Vivienne Westwood and really enjoyed the brand. So if you look at the 90s runways, we can see the obvious Rococo influence, and since Lolita also is inspired by Rococo fashion, it makes perfect sense that Lolitas would love Vivienne Westwood. Hello, it's editing me here. So one other sort of point of reference I would like to sort of add is actually Yori from SNK. This is a character, when I see him, I just think like Vivienne Westwood, and I think it's the coloured hair and specifically the harness trousers. The harness trousers were a thing that Vivienne Westwood did do. She did a lot of pieces that were inspired by bondage and BDSM and very adult themes. I mean, the shop was literally called Sex. It was about being provocative and sort of stirring up some sort of controversy, if you will, and just really sort of being, yes, controversial at the time. And I think it's interesting because harnesses and things like that are just seen as a sort of fashion item now. They were very trendy a few years ago, and I think even around the time of when Yori was first created for SNK and all of that, it probably was just amalgamated as a fashion item at some point. Still very like alternative, like cool and like on the edge, but it was very much still a fashion item at this point. And I think it's interesting how she took something from such a very adult point in the world and sort of integrated it into fashion. So her interpretation of Rococo is obviously more punk inspired and more edgy, but I think that works perfectly with Lolita. Obviously it's not the most typical thing you think of, but again, you can be more edgy and punk in Lolita. And again, I just think this really spoke to Lolitas as well, with the punk attitude of Lolita and how it was women doing it for themselves, or dressing for themselves and going against some of the rules of the society that they found restrictive. So the fashion looks like our fashion and the mindset and values are the same as ours. So of course Lolita would embrace this brand as a whole. So I just wanted to point out this iconic image of these two models in the mini crinny and some rocking horse shoes and the same outfit that Vivienne Westwood made for a Cindy doll. So if you don't know, Cindy dolls are essentially a British version of Barbie, if I put it in a reductive sort of way. They were established in around, I think, 1962, but they're from the 60s, and their original design looks quite different from Barbie. And it was around I think it was the 90s and 2000s, it would have been around this time, they made her look more like Barbie for pretty obvious reasons. Barbie was doing really well and they wanted some of that money. And Mattel caught wind of this and sued them, and now they look like more like how they used to look. They look more like their 60s one, which I prefer because I think they look more cute and it just adds more variation in different kinds of dolls you can get. And one thing I like is that the modern one is a lot more inclusive. Back in the day, inclusion was not in the conversation, but that's not really the point of this video, is it? It's about Viv, it's not about dolls. So we're going to go to 2003, where we have a collaboration between Vivienne Westwood and the Japanese brand Comme des Garçons, and we have the flagship store opening in Aoyama. So finally, a very easy way to get Vivienne Westwood, and this coalesces perfectly with the boom of Lolita. Around this time, Lolita was really popular, and it was also getting really popular abroad as well. It was still quite difficult to get things online, but it wasn't impossible, and we were somehow getting hold of all these interesting magazines and different media from this wonderful thing called the internet, and it was really just making its way around the world. So now I'm just going to show you some examples from Fruits magazine from the early 2000s to show you how prolific Vivienne Westwood was to even Japanese Lolitas. Some of them even went for Vivienne Westwood over the Lolita brand. It very much is a mainstay here. I'm just going to quickly show you an example of how prevalent Vivienne Westwood was in Japan through the Fruits magazine. So this was a collection of photographs of cool people on the street in alternative fashion. This particular one is from 2001, so this is probably going to be predominantly late 90s and early 2000s, which pairs perfectly with the sort of popularity of the Lolita fashion gaining popularity and the actual opening of the Vivienne Westwood shops in Japan, because it was around this time. So I'll show you some examples. I'm just going to show you examples of more Lolita and Lolita-esque fashions, but there's examples of other fashions that also use Vivienne Westwood, so there's definitely more examples I'm going to show you today, but just so you get the gist. So first off, we've got some sort of old school Lolita, sort of proto Lolita here, and the cardigan is Vivienne Westwood, and you might remember or recognize this sort of cardigan. I think it's sort of iconic, just like a simple sort of cardigan with the Vivienne Westwood logo. I think this is an excellent staple if you've ever wanted to wear a cardigan with Lolita. I think you can't go wrong with something like this. I think this is something I remember seeing fairly often. And this one, the accessories are Barbie and Vivienne Westwood, so I'm not quite sure which is which, but I'm assuming it's sort of almost a mix between a Fairy Kay and Lolita a bit, with the sort of 80s, 90s nostalgia with the Barbie and also the Vivienne Westwood there. I've just realised, I think they've got like fluffy handcuffs on, so it looks like a chain and, you know, like pink fluff. That's very sort of, very Vivienne Westwood, the sort of bondage and sort of BDSM sort of inspiration there, which I wasn't expecting. I do think that's what it is. I can't quite see it clearly, but I'm going to assume that's what it is. And this one, you've got a Vivienne Westwood bag, as you can see, just a nice bag with the logo on there. And this one, you've got Vivienne Westwood shoes, so the iconic rocking horse shoes. Some more Vivienne Westwood shoes, a different kind of rocking horse. And we've got Vivienne Westwood accessories, which is probably going to be perhaps some of the jewellery. I can't quite tell. There's a sort of a Vivienne Westwood charm there, I think, attached to the bag. That might be a Vivienne Westwood bag in of itself. I'm not quite sure. I know it is. I'm so sorry. It says it's a Vivienne Westwood bag right here. Use your brain, dear. And it looks like there's some Vivienne Westwood jewellery, like the necklace there. And this one, you've got Vivienne Westwood hat and the Vivienne Westwood bag. And this one, we've got a Vivienne Westwood bag, which I think is that one hiding there. I think you'll probably find Vivienne Westwood bags quite a lot, especially back in the days. I don't know how good quality the Vivienne Westwood bags, because I don't actually have one right now, but I'm assuming they might be a bit more durable than brand bags. Brand bags have an awful reputation for being made out of really bad quality polyurethane and just crumbling to death within about a year, which is not very good considering how much they tend to cost. And it's not something you can really mend either, so it's just paying all that money for disintegration. Again, we've got another Vivienne Westwood bag. I think it's quite interesting because it's quite a sweet print, but then they've also got this sort of black bag. I feel that's me. I'm someone who tends to think I just want one bag that I use for everything, and I normally get it in black because black tends to go with everything. So there's random times when I want to wear something more sweet and sugary. It's this sweet sugary cord and then just this black bag. It just looks really funny. Okay, we've got another Vivienne Westwood bag, and it's this cute little pink one. I think that's really cute. I haven't really seen one like that before. I'm sure someone like the Japanese second-hand luxury market, I'm sure there's one. And here we've got another Vivienne Westwood bag, which I'm assuming is that one there. One thing I wish they had was an example of the heart bag I was talking about, because I feel I talk about this and it's either things people remember it very well or they have no idea what I'm talking about. Sometimes it feels a bit like a bit of a fever dream, but I swear Vivienne Westwood were well known for doing heart bags. I don't know if they were the originator, but they're definitely known for at least being one of the first. So common staples in the Lolita sort of sphere of Vivienne Westwood would of course be the rocking horse shoe. She's the icon, she's the moment. I really wish I had one. Yeah, I do not need to give, she needs no introduction, you know who she is. In terms of other shoes, I also would recommend the Tarte shoe. No one really talks about this, it's just thought it would look nice in a cold, it looks like it would work. Of course, you've got the mini crini, it's a mini crinoline, it's a no-brainer. I haven't actually seen that many. I don't know if they actually still make them, I don't think they do. But if you find one, it will probably work really well in a cold. You've got the Vivienne Westwood cardigans, which I just think look really nice with any cold because they're quite simple, but the silhouette of them works quite nicely with the poofy skirts because the cardigan isn't super long. And we've got the jewellery, of course, just loads of pearls. And I mean, this is just pearl necklaces, these aren't Westwood necklaces, but the pearls and that sort of Rococo inspiration works really well for obvious reasons. And we've got the heart bag, which of course is a bag that's a heart. And along with the rocking horse shoes, you see many dupes of these by actual Lolita brands. Now, I don't know if Vivienne Westwood invented the heart bag. I can't say that for sure, but she's one of the first people who popularized it, and she's known for making them. Generally, even if someone in normie fashion has some passing interest in fashion and wants a heart bag and they have the money to, they're probably just going to get a Vivienne Westwood heart bag because they're a little bit iconic. It's also key to note that if you were an international girly like me, especially if you were UK based, Vivienne Westwood is so much easier to procure than a Japanese brand, especially back then. It's like early internet. How were you going to do that? It was so much easier just to physically walk into a shop. So especially for a lot of Lolitas who were near a Vivienne Westwood store and weren't in Japan, this was a lifeline, especially with things like shoes, Japanese shoes, even brands. You get small, medium or large, or the size range just isn't very good, or they don't do shoes big enough for some people. So having a more sort of European sort of style of shoes and having a bigger range, for some people that were the only shoes they could get at the time. So it was also sort of lifeline for many Lolitas back in the day. So that's it. It's a perfect storm of British punk coming to Japan, mixing with Japan's own version of punk and their fashion. Lolita being a very punk fashion inspired by Rococo elements, and Vivienne Westwood being that British punk also inspired by Rococo elements, just sort of coming together and making this really interesting sort of mixing of cultures and just having this like lasting legacy on Lolita today. I generally think Lolita wouldn't be the same without Vivienne Westwood and the impact that she's had on the fashion. And I think this is an important part of the fashion in terms of the sort of values and mindset of the fashion. As I said, it is a punk fashion. It was about dressing for yourself, and it had this very, I'm doing it for me, I'm going against societal norms sort of mentality about it. So even if you just like to wear the dress and you're not thinking about making a particular statement or being very punk, I think it's still good to know that this is the origins of what you're wearing and where it came from. And that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I suppose please like and subscribe. I'm very bad at sort of advertising to do that. And with that, go have fun with fashion. Okay, bye!